Hi, I'm Akanksha, an engineer turned ecologist. I got hooked on the fascinating games animals play to survive and to reproduce. I'm deeply enthusiastic about science that goes beyond disciplinary boundaries, and Project MELA is a perfect example of that spirit.
It started 3 years ago. I think it was conceptualized in Konstanz. Akanksha, she was doing her PhD in the Indian Institute of Science and she was visiting us. She was working with blackbucks and drones, looking at different aspects of their lives. And we started thinking about looking at mate choice in this system. I'm Vivek. I'm a biologist, a behavioral biologist is what I call myself now. In a past life, I've been an engineer, and then for some time I was making shampoos. So,
I'm Himal Naik and I am an interdisciplinary researcher. I mostly use computer vision for different applications. I started bird watching and that's how I came to studying wildlife. So now I write softwares to study animals. Our project is based in India. We are working in two regions. Velavadar National Park in Gujarat. It's also known as Blackbuck National Park. So that's a place to watch blackbucks. Although they exist everywhere in India, we work in Velavadar National Park for the first year, and last 2 years we've worked at Tal Chhapark Sanctuary located in Rajasthan, which is the neighboring state of Gujarat.
both in the west and northwest.
Blackbuck only exists in India. Everywhere in India, but then lekking in two national parks.
Lekking, it's a rare mating system, primarily described in birds. So it's a Swedish word for play. Lots of males aggregate in closely clustered territories, and then they would display to each other or displaying to a female. Typically, it's the male puts the chin up, head up, so the horns go kind of parallel to the back, puts the tail up and kind of makes himself big and walks, sometimes doing fancy footwork. Like those walks, I mean, within males, of course, you also have aggressions, they lock horns, but the display is primarily this, where you put the head up and tail up. And females would visit this area to find mates. It's a breeding behavior.
This whole area, which we call a lekking arena, is like 200 meters by 300 meters. You can imagine a big plain area with a lot of dots on it, and this is where the interaction happens.
Typically, they have two primary breeding seasons, one in spring and one in autumn. The whole lekking period itself is maybe only about 3 weeks, but of course we don't know the exact time when they're going to mate. So our season ends up being about 2 months because we have to go there, sit there and wait for the season to pick up.
The males that gather there, they establish their territories. So in blackbucks, the way they establish their territories is by peeing and pooping on a place. So then they leave their pheromones for the females to smell. They poop ideally on the same place, and then it makes kind of a big circle around it. Within that circle, then there is a small hole dug up in the center. So this is the territories where ideally males would want females to come and sit.
I think the exciting thing is that, I mean, the reason we are able to do this with blackbucks is because these poop circles, so they're modifying the landscape and they're putting these giant circles on the ground. And so they modify the landscape to an extent where you can see this from satellites. If you go from the satellite images, then you see like these poop circles, like these patterns of poop lined across the land. And so you can go back in time. We saw them that they partially moved, and you can still see the patterns, how this transition has happened over the years. And I mean, this is something, again, that this specific lekking system, for example, allows us, which would because they modify the land so much, but wouldn't have been the case otherwise. We are 3 people in the team. So we all, of course, have different interests. We work together collaboratively, but we come from different angles.
We want to study leks. And okay, so it's established that it's a place, which is the same place where there are these males coming, making these poop piles, females coming, mating. We know roughly that it happens in these 2 months. So it's a big logistic operation, how to execute recordings of 20 days of activity in a large area. We decided to use 3 drones. The battery life effectively lasts only about 20 minutes. The overall life is 35 minutes, but we have to calculate the time that the drone takes from takeoff, and we have to stay sufficient distance away from the animals. Let's not spook them, so we stay about half a kilometer away. Very safe distance where they cannot see, or they are at least not paying attention that far. So you want to record for 2 hours, but your battery lasts only for 20 minutes. So then we were like, okay, so we need to replace these drones with another set of drones. So it's like a relay mechanism that when your battery is going down from the one drone, you send another drone on top of it, then remove the first drone and sit one. And because we use 3 drones simultaneously, we need to do this with 3 different drones. So we have 6 active pilots on the field. Every year in the field, we take field assistance. This is a careful operation which has to be executed meticulously, right? So first you start the recording. If any drone stops in between, then the data is kind of lost. So you don't want to stop in between. You want continuous recording. And we do 6 or 7 such cycles to be able to actually achieve. So we go with extra load of batteries, and basically we record 2 sessions, one in the morning, one in the evening. And here also, when we fly 3 drones together, we have to make sure that each drone have some overlapping so that we can actually trace an animal going from one drone to another drone. Okay, then I think I'll have to do the label box session. So first see it for yourself, and then imagine that you'll have 2 hours of movements of males and females going from one territory to another, fighting, courting, everything for every day. And that is the data pattern that we are going to have in the end. This has been a challenge in executing in terms of doing the data collection. And now we have reached the stage where we have softwares which are identifying positions of the individuals, identifying if they are males or females, and then giving us trajectories, which means 2-dimensional movements in the drones of these animals. And now we are in the phase where we are combining all this data. So basically combining data of all the 6 drones, of all the 7 set of flights for one session.
But the cool thing is, I think people have never had this type of spatiotemporal data, like movement of animals in such high detail. We don't have to make inferences about choice in certain way. We can look at the exact courtship behavior. We can quantify that. We can look at when 2 males are fighting. We can over time sort of aggregate who wins more often. So are these types of patterns, do they fall out of the data? So there's lots of directions we can go in.
Grassland ecosystems are open, dynamic, and often overlooked, yet they hold immense ecological value. Blackbuck, as a flagship species, embody the spirit of these landscapes. Their movement, social behavior, and mating systems are all deeply influenced by the openness and structure of the habitat. Studying blackbuck offers a powerful lens into the health, complexity, and conservation needs of grassland systems. Ecosystems that are still among the most misunderstood and undervalued today.
me, I think art and science are not very different from each other. I feel like science is just one way of doing art in some sense. Humans, how we communicate, we're effectively trying to tell stories. That's what artists are trying to do. They're trying to tell a story that somehow touches you or reaches you in a certain way.
So this year, for example, in the field, we had this writer with us from India.
Simar, what she's done is she's taken her experiences in the field with us, but then she's written a fictional story, which gives a very satisfying ending. It not just talks about our experiences there, it combines it with scientific theories and like hypotheses about leks and links these different aspects of science, but with a fictional twist to it. In science, of course, the one big difference is that it's evidence-based storytelling. We're really trying to learn something about the natural world. Often, when you learn something about the natural world, it's more fantastical than fictional stuff. As scientists, we're trying to tell stories about the natural world.
I learned to look at science critically through art. And art and science is, in a way, from my perspective, is an attempt to explain the world around you. So artists try to do that too. And sometimes we have an overlap because, artists use technologies or scientists use inspirations from art.
Being uninhabitable, a transit-only zone accessible for 5 months a year.
This angle is very interesting, and I thought that if we can work together with artists, maybe they can show different sides of our work, which then maybe is a different way of communicating with people about scientific work. For me, the idea is that if somebody is interested in wildlife, then they would naturally learn about the problem. If I worry about, for example, climate change or anything, that's one, in a way, little motivation that looks, how can you motivate people? For me, the approach is maybe through art that gets people interested and curious. And curiosity brings you there. But then you need scientific approach or ideas as well to understand it fully.
When I talk about lekking to Indian audiences, I often describe it using the idea of a swayamvar. In ancient Indian tradition, a swayamvar was a gathering where eligible males would assemble and the females would choose her partner based on displays of strength, skill, or charm. Lekking in blackbuck is surprisingly similar. Males gather in clustered territories, displaying themselves, sometimes for hours, and while females walk through observing and choosing whom to mate with. It's a wild, open-air version of a very old social idea.
कि या तो यहाँ जाएगी फिर वहाँ जाएगी या तो चली जाएगी तो कई दिन अलग-अलग तरीके का ये movement होता है. We came through this interesting interaction with people in terms of learning their relationships with animals. So first of all, it's not only that scientists know about animals, like we met people who have spent a good part of their lives working in the fields and in salt pans near the area. It's a dry and deserted area of Rajasthan. Food is scarce. There are only limited type of trees growing there. There's a community there, for example, Bishnoi community, which is very connected with nature, and there it's a religious sect where they believe in protecting trees and animals, especially blackbucks. They consider blackbuck holy. This community protects them strongly. And we are a country with a lot of mythological stories about animals in general. So ecology and conservation has been part of life in Hinduism, Jainism, different religions, Buddhism that we have in India. So there are different emotions associated with blackbucks, right? In the same places where we work, there are also a big community of farmers who don't like blackbucks because blackbucks come to their farms and eat their crop. And then we met other type of people who are just curious and interested in wildlife because they saw wildlife for a lot of years, and then they shared their observations with us, not only about blackbucks. People would tell us about different type of birds, vultures. Through them we got to know, for example, how in previous days what was the abundance or what kind of animals you would see that you don't see now, or some special behaviors that these animals do. You know, this relationship moves from like, in certain set of days, first we are the strangers, slowly we start becoming friends.
And you also start feeling connected.
Yeah, so it was a wonderful experience in both ways. We learned a lot about animals. We learned about local flora and fauna. Sometimes I think a lot of people underappreciate the help that scientists get from the local people. But there is a lot of knowledge there or ideas there which come from different sources. It's very poorly highlighted so far. I think there is a much more to it that we are exploring, how they help in shaping our science. And I'm excited to see where it's going.
The locals there call the lek a mela.
So the essence of mela is that, you know, when in villages or stuff, wherever you have a proper mela in true definition, is basically people going there and having different types of fun because there are different activities.
The mela, basically, it's, I mean, for us, it's mating ecology of a lek breeding antelope. That's kind of what mela is. But it's also mela in Hindi is like a fair. People come together, you have some rides, some games, some food.
Fun and
people
fair.
Gathering, yeah.
Now looking back, actually, the name kind of fits because I think in this project, we've been able to do a lot of things, which is, I mean, science is the core part of it, but it's the relationships with people that we've built in the villages while working, because, you know, we don't work at traditional field sites where there are like field stations and stuff. We have a big team, so we have usually a team of 9 to 10 people. So that's the aspect which is one part of it. If we add more to it, that how these years have been in terms of not only relationship with the field assistants that we've had. So for example, for the project, we decided that we'll support Indian students who are doing their bachelor's and master's in India. Our team has grown to almost 12 students. And we've had art collaborations in this project. We have a collaboration with Academy Schloss Solitude, where we do exchange of art residencies every year. Then we've had 3 artists joining us, a Norwegian filmmaker. We had a DJ from India joining us. So both of these people came to Konstanz. We do art events every year. So yeah, it's now we can say that we've assembled many different things together in the project, where now we feel that the name kind of worked for us. What do you mean?